Kenyan government aims to boost the amount of revenue and grants to 18.2% of GDP by 2023 from the present 17.3% in 2020. The country is under pressure from the International Monetary Fund to curb spending and boost revenue collection in an effort to trim the public debt, which currently stands at 7.3 trillion shillings. Joining us from Stockholm, Sweden to discuss these headlines is Eric Mokaya, founder of Mwango Capital. Eric, thank you so much for joining us. Good afternoon to you. Why are Kenyans so hostile to financial assistance from the IMF?
I think it's because they don't like the fact that the government has been borrowing and not accounting at least for the money that it's getting. So I think they want the government to be a bit more accountable in terms of the debt that is taking up. And I think because the most of the times when the government is also borrowing, it doesn't consult the people. So I think the Kenyans feel like they need to take up themselves the responsibility of talking to the IMF. So I think I've seen a couple of Kenyans even call the IMF call the IMF headquarters in the US to actually complain about not taking up debt, and of course the IMF cannot take them seriously. But I think it's more of the awareness around how much we're borrowing. I think we've borrowed 4x since 2013, and the fact that the country is also not doing very well with the corona situation. So prices of a lot of stuff are rising, and I think people feel also the amount of money that they're spending also on servicing the debt, which I think is currently at around 68%. It may rise to around 78% more of a bit too much to be spending on just servicing debt. So it's a bit of a debt binge for a couple of years that they've had, which they now have. They're now tired of, and they don't want to have that anymore.
Interesting. There's some tweets. Let's look at some tweets from this when this was announced. One individual said, this is good. The money is going to individuals. Second person said this is not a joke anymore. Kenyans are going after the lender, which is not a bad move. And then third at the bottom, we are fixing the country, a tweet at a time, no more loans. So but how much of this is partly demonization of the IMF or, according to them, corruption with that first tweet, corruption in the Kenyan government?
I think it's a lot of also, there's been a lot of corruption scandals in the last couple of years, which have made them think that some of this money is channeled towards that. And also there's a lot of lack of accountability on where the funds actually go at the end of the day when they arrive. So I think it's both of those two things combined. But this is a lot of a reflection of Kenyans on Twitter. So they're very, very active, and they want to kind of take control of their country. It's more of Twitter activism against debt, so hoping that it reaches the ears and eyes of the IMF. So I think one of the IMF leaders, I think the African leader, was commenting about it, and he said that Kenya has no choice other than to go to the IMF in this regard because the country itself is not doing well so far. So the IMF was like a lender of last resort in this regard. So he was trying to put a positive spin on that, the fact that Kenyans are a bit angry on this aspect of it. So I would say it's a reflection of where Kenyans are right now, and Kenya as a country is right now in terms of it needs help, all the help it can get to get through this crisis.
So if that's the case, Eric, is this a failure of communication on the part of the government in, I guess, an awareness campaign of letting people know how tough things are in the economy and how badly they need the funds?
I think it's that also. Like, there's not been that much aware. I don't think we've ever had this conversation about how much debt we take from outside the country and why we need external debt. So I think people feel like the only kind of communication that is there is how much each person in the country owns. So it's like 7.3 trillion right now in terms of debt so far. So divide that by around 50 million Kenyans, and you have around 130,000 Kenya shillings that every person needs to pay. So I think that's what is being communicated to the Kenyans, that at the end of the day, when your son or daughter is born, they have to pay this much amount of money to the government, to someone outside. So I think Kenyans think of it as the way a person goes to the bank to borrow a loan, and that's not good to keep paying that when we can actually do it from ourselves, and also from the fact that this loan is being used for improper places. So what they would expect from the government is an explanation like, okay, we need the money, but we need it for 1, 2, 3, 4 things. We need it maybe for the vaccines. We need maybe to revive the economy. We need to put money in small businesses. We need to put money in our banks so they can do onward lending to people. So I think those kind of things would help people be more amenable to allowing the government to borrow from outside.
Thanks. I want to move to cooking gas. Cooking gas prices in Kenya set to increase July 1st. How do you think the average Kenyan is going to react to this VAT increase of, I think, 16% on liquefied natural gas?
This is pretty steep, to be honest. 350 Kenya shillings on top of what they're paying currently. It's pretty steep, a steep increase. And I guess like earlier this month, the energy regulator was trying to increase fuel prices by, I think, by a little bit higher than where it was earlier that month. And there was a lot of opposition again on Twitter and a lot on social media from the local from Kenyans who said like they don't want the price increases. And because of that, the energy regulator listened and then kept the prices flat for the next 1 month. So you would expect a lot of visceral reaction from Kenyans on this 16%, given that Kenyans are high consumers of gas. Gas is one of the most commonly used ways to make foods in Kenya currently. So I think you'd expect a lot of reactions from Kenyans again on this. And add on to this the fact that the debt situation is also, people are aware of it, and then add to it the fact that now prices of foodstuffs in Kenya and around East Africa are rising, and I don't think this would be taken very well by most Kenyans, I would say.
Thank you for that. Forgive me, I said liquefied natural gas. LPG is liquefied petroleum. The government, is it justified in pushing this for this increase? Because it was delayed for a year.
I don't think it's really, I can't say like it's justified, but I would say like this is going to hit Kenyans where it hurts the most, where they use a lot of fuel and a lot of LPGs also. So I think I would say it's ill-advised, but again, the government is also under pressure. I think it was one of the things that the IMF also highlighted, that this needs to increase. Part of this, there needs to be some particular increases in taxes in some areas where the government was a bit reluctant to do it. So I think in fuel, it may go from 8% to 16%, and LPG now it may go from 0-rated to 16%. So I think this will hit Kenyans where it hurts the most, but the government is under pressure to raise revenues, and there is no other way to raise revenues other than taxes and borrowing. And I think this time Kenyans are stretched, and that's why they did a little borrowing. But now, again, they have to raise prices on some goods. And, the budget is coming up in June. I think we will be paying keen attention on that and seeing how that can affect the kind of things that the government is going to increase and decrease prices upon. But we expect more price increases than decreases, if anything.
All right, Eric, we're out of time. I wanted to get to the revenue projections, but we'll have you on again to talk about that. Thank you so much. Eric Mokaya, founder of Mwango Capital. Thank you so much for taking us through the happenings in Kenya. Interesting events there.